Hello, everyone. Welcome on board. We are giving a few more minutes to get started so everyone is settled in. But we have a very exciting topic to talk about today. I'm sure everyone in the insights and strategy industry is excited as we are here about what GPT means for us, not only in terms of our day to day job, even in terms of our day to day life. So, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But maybe before we get started, it might be helpful to mention we have done a study with with many of you, people who are working in the insights industry, and we asked them what are the main things they want to find out. And a lot of the response we got was around covering some of the basics, how to give commands, how to prompt GPT, and how to communicate with it effectively. So today we are going to keep the session very practical. We're going to have lots of hands-on exercises together, and please use the Q&A box to ask any questions as we go. We may not know the answers to some of them. We will get back to you later, but we will try to integrate your questions as much as possible as we go. So we're going to get started with a quick introduction, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the use cases for insight sector specifically. And then we will also go into why we believe there is still a role for us to play, and we are not going to get replaced by machines anytime soon. But before probably we get into that, a very quick intro. This is Tugce speaking. I'm the founder and CEO of Streetbees. Vatsala, it would be great if you can also give a quick intro.
Great. Thanks, Dee. Hello, everyone. I'm Vatsala, and I work as a VP of Client Strategy in Streetbees. And I'll basically add to my introduction whether I'm actually a ChatGPT curious. I'm not an atheist, and I'm not a believer as yet.
I love the balance. I have to say, I'm on the more eternal optimist side, seeing the good side of the technology so far. I love the balanced approach. Okay, so maybe a good place to start is to cover some of the very basics, because this is all very new for all of us. So it might be really helpful to see what actually ChatGPT is. So as you may know, ChatGPT is a large language model, what we call LLMs. There are a lot of other LLMs available from Facebook, from Google, and increasingly even as open source, right? That you can access without having to pay for it. And we are also even seeing private dedicated large language models coming to the market. For example, Bloomberg, as a financial institution, launched their own financial large language model to be able to understand the conversations in the financial world much better. So, how do large language models work, and why GPT is such a big deal? Why all of a sudden all of us have become experts in natural language processing and large language models? There's nothing new about NLP or LLMs. It's been around for a very long time. Just to give you an example, Streetbees has been working with NLP for more than 8 years, and even LLMs for more than 3 years now. But what changed is when natural language processing predicts the text so that it can sound like a human, the problem was that it was always very limited using pairs of words that comes before in the text to be able to predict the next word. And that's very limiting. And the reason why it was very limiting is that the calculation power we had, the computation power we had, wasn't enough. What then happened is around 2018, transformers came to picture, which allowed parallel processing of much larger scale data, powered by GPUs from companies like NVIDIA, allowed us to be able to do much more computation. What that means now, when the large language models are predicting which word should come next in text, they are not only relying on the last 2 words, 5 words, they can actually rely on the entire document, on the entire internet. And that's why it's so revolutionary and so transformative in its effect. The way I describe this usually to people is that when we tried with large language models, things like naming clusters 3-4 years ago, it would sound like a toddler. It kind of makes sense, the words it's saying, but you can't quite get what they are trying to say. And maybe a year ago, it still sounded more like a college graduate, but maybe on a drunken night. It wasn't still perfectly accurate what they are saying. Whereas now we are at a stage where the machine does sound like a Harvard intern, right? It's very accurate, very methodological, and making sense most of the time. There are times that it doesn't make sense. And maybe it's a good place, Vatsala, just to pause here and ask you, what are some of the use cases you have already seen that our customers in the consumer product world using GPT for?
Brilliant. Yes. So some of the ways we've seen clients using it is in workshops where they have to sort of think on the feet. They need a bit more of sort of creative nudge or creative boost. And so they basically input information into ChatGPT. And so it gives you a way of expressing different ideas. The other way I have seen clients looking at it is to look at broad set of information that they might have and then look for something that might be generated from that broad, like a big project database. Currently it's like a single project. So they would basically get the chat GPT to seek the right information, but it's not doing complex analysis of that. It's basically just giving them simple answers from that specific report.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good starting point for sure. And I'm sure it's going to change quite quickly as we saw the evolution from GPT-2 to 3 to 4. And even between 3.5 and 4, there's fundamentally big differences in terms of how sentient the model is and how meaningful its answers are. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of tasks you already tried. There are some very popular ones where you write the ingredients you have in your fridge, it gives you the best recipe. That's an absolutely legit way of using GPT. One of the biggest differences between GPT-3 and 4 is that OpenAI introduced a lot more guardrails. For example, not that I'm suggesting you should do this, in ChatGPT-3, you would be able to ask a question like, oh, I have bleach and these other ingredients at home. What is the most destructive bomb I can build? And unfortunately, GPT would actually answer that question in a lot of detail, which is clearly not a good idea. Instead, what it now says with GPT-4 is that, I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question, and maybe you should see a therapist. So it would start leading you, into more safer zone rather than giving you advice on something potentially quite dangerous. So what we're going to continue to see with OpenAI is that, of course, they're going to bring more and more guardrails to GPT itself in terms of what large language model can be and cannot be used for. But what is more important, which we are going to cover in this session, is you can also put those guardrails. And we are going to show you some examples of how you can do that. And many companies which are also building solutions on GPT are also putting their own guardrails to be able to control what the model does and does not do. So one interesting part is here, obviously, we're not going to go into the super general intelligence. That's probably discussion for a whole another session if ChatGPT is going to kill all of us. But what is interesting here is that there are mixed feelings about it. Vatsala, you already gave us a clue where you are in this journey. Has your approach or appetite to use it changed at all with the current news around ChatGPT?
I think my curiosity has definitely overtaken the concerns as of now, but I do understand where the element of, when I think there's been chat about sort of OpenAI almost making it non-competitive. So those kind of elements are what I would be quite wary about. To eliminate competition and not let smaller players play in the area would be a concern. But I think in the principle, as a principle, what it sort of propagates, I'm quite curious as to where it goes in the future.
So we were just talking a little bit more about the news and some of the restrictions that we have been seeing. And maybe as we are just moving on to some of the usage areas in insights, it would be great to hear, Vatsala, from your perspective, what are the main concerns we have been hearing in the space when people are worried about using GPT, given all the news about banning it in Italy and some other regulatory restrictions? What are the main concerns that's stopping people from using GPT at the moment?
I think we all fall into that kind of early adopter to laggards kind of mindset, and all of us approach technology the same way. And I was thinking it very simply in terms of like when a lot of the household appliances came, we thought household chores were done for, but they're definitely not. We are all taking care of the houses. So I think people are not doing it either because they have that initial hesitation to try a new thing, or there is this fear that it might take their job, which we are going to talk about, that it definitely is not doing that anywhere soon. And that, I think, one of the key things I was thinking was, can ChatGPT be humorous? No, it cannot. Then you still need humans. Because you need that complex interconnectivity of neurons for a long time to come.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think what the approach we take here is that there are a lot of good tasks that can be done by GPT quite efficiently. And these usually tend to be repetitive tasks that, in most cases, humans are not too keen to do themselves anyway. And this is where we see the biggest opportunity to be able to delegate some of the tasks that we normally typically have to do into GPT. Now, what we suggest is we're going to jump in and talk through some of the use cases, and you can continue to ask us any questions you have, especially if you are trying to make one of the use cases work on your site. This is a workshop session. We can try to help you with that as well. Now, one of the simplest areas to start with is secondary research or desk search, as we would call it, to get started, right? So if you are writing a new research brief or you're just getting started looking into a new marketing opportunity, one of the things that we were very impressed what GPT is able to do is the initial knowledge to get you started. And in some cases, this may be more relevant also for new product lines where you don't already have a lot of data in your hands to work with, but also, as you can see on the right hand side, to generate a hypothesis. One point that usually when we are writing a strategic presentation or starting a research project, it's very important to have a hypothesis that we are going to explore. And in a completely new area, to come up with these hypotheses, also just to be able to get outside our comfort zone. Maybe we already have a few, but to be able to get the inspiration from ChatGPT as well, that can be like a really good starting point. Vatsala, I know we've done some research around, for example, cultural identity. Do you think that it would be a good place to start from GPT to understand the cultural identity and its relationship to consumption?
Definitely, yeah. I think some of the broader thematic areas where we start very broad are a very good start point for Chat GPT to give you a kind of start point, different ways of thinking about it. And so the kind of element I thought was interesting when we looked at, for example, sort of Britishness for a big manufacturer, a food manufacturer, is around the aspects of Britishness that basically got us to think about. And that was an interesting almost hypothesis, as you say it, or start points or avenues to investigate, which a human just by sitting by themselves might miss out on some of those nuance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm thinking, for example, a lot of research goes into new forms of consumption, right? How plant based food is replacing some of our meat based habits, or how the entertainment culture is shifting in a way that the alcohol consumption out of home amongst the younger generation is changing. And we all have already quite a lot of data on these topics, but it's changing fast. And if we are also targeting a specific demographic in a specific country, there's just so much information available within GPT that it gives us different angles that we may not have necessarily thought about.
Absolutely.
area is maybe we just move on to a little bit more technical part of it. Vatsala, do you want to share with us what are some of the examples we see here to actually get the bot do survey writing or taxonomy for us?
So what is interesting about the bot is essentially the bot is able to also look at generated data or expansive data and pick things which are relevant to the question that you asked. What is interesting is when we do some of these ChatGPT generated or helped with researches, we are able to actually see quite a lot of accuracy in the way it asks questions. One of the areas that it can really help in the future is where it can cut out on, as you were saying, some of the mundane tasks of business insights, and it can get you to sort of start with a playground and hone the playground and make it sharper rather than start from scratch, which is essentially helping us optimize time. So the interesting ways in which we've looked at in our internal work is where it's given quite interesting open-ended questions as well to start with. So after we sort of set rules for it, so it has to start with open-ended and then go into close-ended. It'll follow those kind of processes and theories to help get to the right answer in a much more richer way.
Understood. Yeah, fantastic. And I find it also quite interesting how the taxonomies work. We've been working with open text data, unstructured data for over 8 years now. And we have built a lot of very detailed, granular taxonomies over that time in different categories. What I find quite interesting is if you're going into a new area and you don't have a taxonomy yet, it generates a pretty decent one to get you started, right? So for example, if you do a lot of small scale research, 200, 300 sample size, normally it would go into coding, it will come back. None of that is no longer necessary. It will not generate a super detailed food taxonomy that looks at chocolates in 500 different ways. That's still a job for us, for experts to do. But if you are actually trying to categorize from a quick survey the results, it does it within like a literally matter of 30 seconds, and it does actually give us quite a good sense of what the data is saying in that case. There are two other areas that we think is very relevant, and there's actually a question from Jacob about the leaks of corporate information being fed into the model. And Jacob, I think this would also answer partly your question. If we start from the right-hand side, it's possible to use private large language models or locally hosted large language models. You're absolutely right that there is not sufficient understanding of how the models work yet to be able to get comfortable that corporate documents are not going to end up being used to train effectively OpenAI's models. Now, I'm sure you have seen Google just launched a machine unlearning hackathon instead of machine learning, and it's getting very popular. And that's exactly the problem they are trying to solve. Can they tell the machine, forget about this data you have seen, don't use it, it was just a one-off purpose, right? Currently, large language models don't know how to do that. And that's I'm sure a problem that will get solved in the next year or so. However, in the meantime, there are still ways to be able to work with large language models using your corporate documentation. One of them is through SharePoint. If you already use the Microsoft suite, I'm sure many of you have access to SharePoint. And you probably know that Microsoft owns a big chunk of OpenAI. So what they did is very clever. They introduced some of the OpenAI solutions into SharePoint as a private LLM. So what you can do is you can put a lot of your documents into SharePoint and then program it so that you can query, just like you were asking a question to ChatGPT, you can query your own documents inside SharePoint. And that's a completely protected environment, right? There is no possibility of anything leaking to OpenAI from there. So that's one way to shortcut it until there is a better solution for that. Another one is to use private LLMs. We know some of our customers in the food space because they have so much data, including data from their own CRM, social media data, years and years of surveys. They are putting all of that together to create their own private LLM as well, dedicated just to food, for example, or just to beverage. That will take more time to develop because the kind of data we are talking about is not thousands, millions, it's billions. To actually have an effective large language model, but definitely that's going to be a thing in the next year, in the next couple of years coming. If we come back to the left-hand side, this is one of my favorites. I really do not like making decks, personally. And when I started my career as a strategy consultant, we were spending quite a lot of time like fiddling through, fitting boxes and, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, which I always felt like a machine should do this for me. That shouldn't be a human job. Finally, we're there. The machine does do it for us. We actually mentioned a couple of solutions here that you can use, like Magic Slides, etc. But the exciting thing is, again, through Microsoft and their relationship with OpenAI, this is also coming into PowerPoint very soon, right? So what that means is using these tools, you can simply put the information you have in a Word document, right? This is my hypothesis. This is kind of like the information I want to get covered. Here are 5-10 reports where you can pull the information from. Go, GPT. Use these 10 reports, use my hypothesis, headings, etc. Create a deck. Not only it does the job of fitting things in, finding the icons, using the images, which is all the like fiddly design stuff, but also, even more importantly, it searches through the documents, it pulls out the relevant bits, it can write the story, put the taglines, and it generates a, say, 10, 15, 20 page deck, whatever it is that you need as a first draft. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. It still needs the human to go over it, review it. Probably you would end up changing the taglines, sharpening the storyline. Maybe it chose a graph that you don't like. You might take it out. And there's one big caveat here that although OpenAI also has DALL-E, ChatGPT itself cannot quite read graphs yet. It doesn't have the numerical skills to do that yet. So when it's pulling in a graph from an existing document, it's actually relying on the caption, right? So if you have a lot of graphs without a caption, this won't work. But there are a lot of situations where you may have received lots of reports over the last couple of years on a specific topic from different agencies. Rather than you having to go through each of them and choosing what's relevant, GPT can do that for you. And take a look some of those tools we mentioned here that you can actually leverage for that purpose. There are a few more questions about transparency here. Yeah, absolutely. The blogs and stories may have been used. This is one of the topics we also touched at the very beginning. This is absolutely an issue at the moment. So that's why, for example, some publishers made a complaint saying that their information is effectively pulled in without their consent or without recognition or any financial returns. There is an agreement going on at the moment between the publishers and OpenAI where they will be paid royalties to be able to use their data. This is toothing pain, and it is going to happen. It's so new that a lot of regulations and systems are simply not in place. But I think the approach here is just to be able to, air these problems and continue to solve them as we go. So we are going to come to the roles and responsibilities of agencies in a second. But what I would love to do, because I think it can be quite useful if you haven't used it yet, you can still see my screen. I think we had enough technical problems for today. So for hopefully the rest of the conversation, technology is going to agree with us. One of the tools we use a lot at Streetbees is Playground. Playground is basically part of ChatGPT. So you can either go to the ChatGPT interface, which is just a chat box, right? And you write your questions, you get answers. You can even do some programming there using a little bit of Python if you are familiar with it. But if you don't want to use any coding whatsoever, but you do want to program a bot You can literally do it right now, right? You don't even need a corporate account. As you can see, this is my personal account I'm using here. And basically, Playground is a slightly more advanced version of the ChatGPT interface. Why is it more advanced? Because it allows us to program it to do more complex tasks, right? The example I was thinking about that might be useful today was, what if you wanted to program an ethnographic bot? Let's say you want to understand how consumers are going to react to a new product you are launching. You don't want to do old school focus group. You would rather actually speak to some example consumers, but you also don't want to spend the time for 200 conversations, like you literally talk to everyone one by one. Well, why don't you just program a bot to do that for you, right? So what we can do is I wrote up a prompt here, which we can share with you guys afterwards. And you can see all I'm doing here is I'm writing my prompt here, right? So I start by telling ChatGPT how I want it to behave. Who is it? I'm giving an identity to it first, right? You're an ethnographic interviewer. Your name is Juliet. Why not? And the user in this case is going to be your interviewee, right? And then I'm starting, and some of the questions we got from you guys in advance of the session was how to best order the commands. And that's quite an important question, right? So we call these system prompts. We start with system prompts where we are teaching the bot who they are and what are the parameters within which they can operate. And then we come to the task. What is the task we want, right? We want it to evaluate, in this case, the user's level of loneliness, right? We want to understand the impact of feeling lonely, depressed, anxious, and how they are handling, like, questions around intimacy, happiness in relation to that. Because we know that these feelings of depression or feeling lonely has a huge impact also on people's choices of different products, as it has become a very relevant trend in modern society. We then tell Juliet, our interviewer that we are programming, how to ask the questions, right? So we can say, always ask about their past experiences. You should avoid abstract conversations. You should be subtle in uncovering unconscious drivers. Never make a judgment like a good researcher, right? A good ethnographic researcher would stay neutral, don't make personal observations, and maintain a discipline to ask one question at a time. Then this initial prompt is really important. Where GPT usually struggles is how to start the conversation and how to end the conversation. In the middle, it actually does a really, really good job. So we make its job a little bit easy, where we say, start every conversation with this and finish every conversation with this, right? And then we say at the end, give us a summary of what you learned about this person and also give a score on their level of loneliness. Now, this is touch and go. It sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. These systems are still not super reliable, so we will see what we get. So I'm just submitting that. Okay, fantastic. So Juliet starts having a conversation with me. Once you program this bot, at the moment, I'm going to act as the user, but imagine the user is your consumer. You can send this to anyone, and then they can actually have a real chat, a real conversation. So I can say, I'm feeling great today. I'm really enjoying the Wimbledon games. For those of you in London, at the moment, we are enjoying a little bit of tennis here. Okay, that's great. So it's very interesting. It understands what I'm saying, but it want to pull the conversation in the direction we actually gave it a task, right? So it's asking me, oh, okay, that's great. Who are you watching it with? It wants to really get into the conversation. Am I feeling lonely, right? And then I can say, if I get a chance, I would go to games with my friends. At the moment, I'm watching it with my partner at home. Submit. Fantastic. And then it starts asking me if I spend quality time with my friends. So I can say, yes, I try to make time for my friends and see them at least once a week. And it knows that, the loneliness is not only about friends and partner, and it wants to understand how close I am with my family. Bear in mind, I didn't write a survey. I didn't tell it to ask questions about, family, friends, etc. It has sufficient information that if it's an ethnographic researcher, it knows how it needs to behave, how it needs to actually develop these questions, right? And I can say, all right, so I'm originally from Istanbul, so I don't get to see my family very often, unfortunately. So I miss them. Okay, we still feel connected, and the spelling mistakes are etc. all okay. It can easily correct those, right? Through FaceTime. Okay, and then I told it how to finish the conversation. So now it's asking me my final question, and I wants to understand why. And I can say, I would be Wonder Woman because she's always curious. If everything works well, as I said, it sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't. Today we are going quite well. And it basically says, okay, that's great. So your loneliness score is quite low. You are 2 out of 10. And it gives me a nice summary of why that's the case. Now, guys, this is a super simplified version, right? Because we just had very little time. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to program something like an interviewer bot literally within a matter of minutes. You can copy my prompt here. We will share this with you guys. You can adjust it whichever way you like. You can make the ethnographic interviewer. You can change it and say, you're a McKinsey strategic consultant and you're going to make a comment about this topic. Now, talk to me about it, right? And it behaves that way, right? It learns to behave that way. I also want to quickly show you the relevance of some of these parameters here that you don't get in the ChatGPT interface, but you do get here. So first of all, you can choose what kind of a mode you want. I'm choosing chat here because I want to be able to actually simulate a conversation with user. You can choose which chat you want to use. I used 3.5 today because it's much faster. 4 would be smarter, more sentient, but it's gonna be slower. Temperature is a really interesting one. Temperature is the level of randomness in the conversation. So if I set the temperature to 0, that means that every single conversation now I repeat are going to be very similar, right? It's going to try to get the results as consistent as possible. And sometimes you want that. But sometimes we might want to increase temperature full to 2 because we actually want the randomness. We want the conversation to go in different directions, explore different topics. So we want to introduce a certain level of randomness into that. And you can see here there are a few other parameters you can use. You might want to limit the tokens, which influences how much you are paying for a conversation. And you can also determine if you want similar questions, similar results to appear again and again, or you want to limit that. So this is a very, very simple way. I'm going to come back to our presentation now. But this is basically a very simple way for us to be able to use GPT. And literally, there is no task you can't program with this. It's actually super, super exciting. Maybe we just move back to our presentation. And one of the questions Vatsala was about
how would insights be affected? So from my perspective, I think some of the manual tasks will go very seamlessly to ChatGPT kind of models. So that would be somewhere where we are doing repetitive tasks of, for example, creating profiling slides, for example, creating very structured, simple questionnaires. And as we had seen from Tugce's example, those are the kind of tasks where an automated model or LLM would be able to help quite seamlessly. The aspects which do need human intervention is firstly exactly what Tugce was doing, guiding the bot to go the right direction. that element of the human guidance will never not go in the short term, as far as I can see. You would need the human to steer it, to start it, to get it set up and running. And then we will have to separate out tasks into simpler tasks. And that
Mhm.
would be something that the bot would be able to sort of follow through separately. What it might or might not do, currently specifically doesn't do, is connect the dots, like I was saying, the neurons, the mental brain neurons that we subconsciously do without even thinking about it. That's an additional task for bot. It does things in my head. Language wise, it does connect a lot of dots, but in terms of broader thinking, it does linear thinking at the moment. And the thinking needs to be a human brain. The strategy that comes out at the other end has to be a human brain. Currently, that's not something that a bot can do. So actually, good news for all of us is that it will take some of the manual tasks away, but it will keep some of the interesting tasks and mentally challenging tasks very much in the hands of the human.
Absolutely. Vatsala, we have some really interesting technical questions as well. So why don't we just dive into some of those and let's see how much we can be helpful. There's one question. You want to do a call with 40 respondents. You want to actually program your own bot. Can you do that? So there are a couple of ways to do it. You can actually program it within Playground and then share that. That's a little bit tricky because if people change anything in the prompt, it won't work, it will break. The other way to do that is actually over WhatsApp, and it's really, really easy to hook it up. There is a direct connection between OpenAI and WhatsApp. It does require a tiny bit of technical knowledge. If this is of interest, we have a demo on this. It will only take half an hour for us to show how to hook up WhatsApp to OpenAI, because then your prompt effectively becomes the backend of your machine and WhatsApp technology becomes your front end. So you don't need to code anything. You just hook up the two together and then you can actually have conversations via WhatsApp with your users. Of course, you are going to need their consent to have that conversation, etc. I think it's a really nice and easy way actually to tap into your consumers without having to go through any other solutions. And as I said, we can just do a quick technical demo on how to help with that. There's another question about the low quality answers. Watsal, I'm going to leave that one with you as well in terms of if we are, for example, doing within the Streetbees app a conversation with users through GPT, how do we handle low quality answers?
So, yeah, good question. What we can do in this case is set rules for the bot. When the bot analyzes, we can set rules. For example, if we have generic answers, for example, low quality generic answers, if someone, like, consumers are just saying, oh, I like it, and we say, firstly, we can set it up in questioning itself. So that's where the human intervention comes in at the upfront part of it. So we can actually set the prompts or rules to say, if someone answers this way, probe them to say, what about that, or what element of the product or brand do you like, and therefore you will get much better answers. So you can do it at the upfront part, or you can then ask it to sift out those questions from the final summary. So you can basically train it or give it a rule command to say, remove the answers which just mention I like it, for example. And that is, yeah, very much possible.
And I love that because I can see we have quite a few people from the food and beverage industry here today. One of the biggest problems is either if it's a multiple choice survey or even in open text, when people say, I chose this because I like the taste, or I chose it because I like the smell, it's a bit of a dead end, really, for the conversation. It doesn't give us much to be able to run clustering on, to understand the drivers of consumption, right? And multiple choice already limits you. Streetbees methodology has been open text, but even for us, when people said in open text, I like the taste, you get blocked there. What GPT then improved is we just don't accept that as an answer anymore, right? So during the conversations, to increase the conversation quality, we now have prompts that are triggered if people give answers like, how are you feeling today? I'm okay. Why do you like this? I like the taste. What we want to do though, before we finish today, is actually go through a few more examples with you, because as I said, we want to keep this session as practical as possible. We got a lot of questions around, and I find this quite interesting. This is very new, and it's perfectly natural to feel a little bit unsettled and threatened. What it will mean for the wider, insights community. The view that we have taken at Streetbees is that there is so much we can do with the machines that we want to delegate in terms of writing draft decks, having conversations via the app, which feels like real human conversations. So these are scalable, high-tech solutions that we can benefit from. But to actually finalizing a report, finding the most important points in that that's really relevant for a particular company's strategy. Also managing very many stakeholders around it, doing the presentations and workshops, etc., are still very much what we see as human input, where rather than spending hours and hours going through cross tabs and CSV files and Tableau, we can get rid of all those tasks, and instead we can spend all our time to get the creative insights that automatically applies and implements to the business. That's been our main view. Now, there are a few other things that are really relevant here, in terms of the why we think we still need humans basically in the loop, right? We already mentioned one of them, that guardrails. We have to put protections around what GPT does and doesn't do. An important one of those is you don't want the conversations to be biased. So when we write our prompt, if you are using Playground, for example, when we write our prompt, we would make sure we add commands there that you need to have national representative coverage. The questions needs to be unbiased. You cannot direct the consumer to answer in a certain way. So that's quite important to still control those. The other one is what we call in the GPT world hallucinations. I'm sure you've come across that. We talked at the very beginning how the model is trained. It is actually not sentient. It doesn't understand what it's saying. Model, right? It just predicts the next word. What does that mean? The algorithm behind it is trained for coherence and persuasiveness. It just wants to sound like human. So when it doesn't know really what to say next, it makes it up, right? It actually uses the most likely, the most coherent phrase that would make the human, the master listening, be convinced that this sounds like a human. Because that's the main motivation. There is no training behind GPT to be accurate, to be precise. That's why when it doesn't know what to say, it makes it up. Again, you can override that. In our own system, Streetbees, we override that with guardrails, saying that when it doesn't know what to say, it should just say, I don't know. You can do the same thing in your Playground function. You can add a couple of sentences where you say, first check where you got this information from, list your sources. Then you can say, double check if you are sure this is the right answer. And then you can add a third one where you say, if you are not sure by at least 70%, 75% probability, say you don't know. So you can actually train your own machine to be more accurate and exclude hallucinations. One thing that we learned about GPT in the last couple of months is that it's a pleaser, right? It wants to give you answers that you are going to be happy with. But at the same time, if you ask it step by step to process its thoughts, it will see where it made a mistake, right? And that's usually the trick you use. Okay, you gave this answer, but we want to make sure that we want you to think it through and be absolutely sure you are not hallucinating here. So it's actually possible to go around some of these problems at the moment. If you look at the sources part, this is something you can, to a great extent, override. You can basically say, give me the sources where you got this information from. And probably the most important part is the quality control. In our side at Streetbees, whenever we use GPT for any tasks, there is still human in the loop. For example, if a draft report is created, it goes to a strategist to be shaped up, checked, finalized for quality purposes before it actually goes out. And this is not even a matter of development. We actually expect this is going to stay this way. And machines can't do all the jobs. Humans don't want to do all the jobs. But when you put them together, it's the winning combination. We get large scale jobs to be done by the machine, but we always keep humans in the loop as well for quality, for creativity purposes. So we already talked a little bit about the unreliability issues. I'm conscious of time. We want to go into some of the results of what you can see. Here, what you are seeing is the end-to-end structure of how we have basically built the new Streetbees tool SPX to be able to generate briefs, create a human conversation, and then analyze the report, right? And a lot of this on a smaller scale you can also do using Playground. But the way it works at the moment with us is that instead of writing a brief, you can literally write a business question. It's like 2 sentences, whatever the business problem that you are dealing with. It might be as simple as, we are going to launch a new foundation product. We want to understand who wants SPF in foundation, why not, right? So you don't have to write research questions. You don't have to write a survey. You don't have to write a brief. You just write your business question. And we have 3 bots that you are seeing on this screen. The first bot takes the business question, using 8 years of information from Streetbees, turns it into a brief. That brief then generates what we call data parameters to be able to power up a conversation through a bot inside the Streetbees app. So the bot behaves like an ethnographic researcher, where they are actually talking to a consumer, and it does the full interview. The results come back, it goes into the strategy bot, which analyzes the data, does the taxonomy and classification, does the clustering, and then it gives us the summary report. Is the report good enough to use straight away to present to your manager in a leadership meeting? No. It would be 75-80% there though. So what then remains to do for us is to be able to shape up, sharpen the arguments, build a better storyline in the taglines, and then it will be there. And it reduces the total time to do a research of this sort from 6 weeks to about 12 hours. And it reduces the cost significantly as well, from thousands of pounds to something that's a lot more affordable. So it really changes the way that we can actually use insights in the end. Now, one interesting example we did on this one was, let's take something like electric car, and when people don't choose Tesla and choose another electric car, what's the reason for that, right? And we asked the same question to ChatGPT to answer, and then we also did it through SPX. And you can see why you want to use different tools to protect and put guardrails around ChatGPT. GPT is very powerful in doing specific tasks. It did a great job in creating a brief from a single question. It did a great job in conversing with the consumer and cutting the data, but it doesn't have any understanding of quotas and weighting and national representation, or which of these findings is most important for the strategy of that company. So there is still quite an important role to play there for the users. So the way we think about it is that these tools are here to complement and not to conquer. I know we are running out of time, but what I want to leave you with is some of the tools that we use. There is no reason to be a programmer. You don't need to know any coding languages. This all can be done with zero understanding of coding. But what you can do is you can actually train in playground that we just saw your own prompts. So what I did today was a zero-shot prompt because I didn't provide any example conversations. What I could have done easily is either a one-shot prompt or few-shot prompts where at the end of my box on the left-hand side, I could have written 3 examples of really good conversations and a real ethnographer had. And then I would say, in your style, replicate this. And this is the beauty. In the past, when we needed to train an NLP model, we needed thousands and thousands of learning material for training. Whereas now, literally, with 3 example conversations, which is what we show with what we call few shot learning in prompt engineering, you can actually train the bot to sound like someone, right? I was mentioning earlier that, that's how I trained a bot to behave like Tugce, the CEO. It basically can answer emails for me now, and it learned from all my previous emails, not only how I answer the question, but even my tone, my way of talking, etc. as well. So yeah, we might be jobless very soon. There are a few other examples here that we covered for you. I know we don't have time to go into that. But basically, if you want to use the prompts for understanding, okay, what does the term healthy means for Gen Z in relation to ice cream, you can be that specific, and you can see some of the example prompts we used here to be able to get the best possible results. Similarly, if you want to do a role play, a follow-up, like these are some of the ways where you can actually sequence the tasks. And this is so important because GPT is going to rush into giving you the best answer. The more you can break down the tasks, sequence them, the more thinking it's going to put into it before actually answering. So that really helps with the accuracy of the answers. We have some examples here about demographic research or like creating audience personas or buyer personas, and to work on things like brand value, market differentiators. And I guess the note we want to finish on is there's one more last question that we can take, is that GPT is not a replacement. It's not the way we see it, and it's impossible to use it for all the tasks. But if there are certain tasks that you would rather give to an intern and you would rather not do yourself, GPT is now that intern multiplied by 100, right? That's the amount of computation power you actually have behind that. And there is one question around the speed and scale of adoption of ChatGPT insights. Maybe Vatsala, we can take that one last question.
It would pique a lot of people's interest because I'm going by people I know, LinkedIn in general, etc. There's a lot of buzz around it. People are talking about, but it's a very individual take on it. It'll differ by sophistication of different people and organizations. Some organizations are doing it a lot more effectively and efficiently compared to others who would actually, as you said, play around with it a bit, and then figure out what works and what doesn't work. But yes, we would have some kind of dabbling, pretty large scale, but it depends on how sophisticated, where we land up from our level of sophistication and how much we understand it, how much we are able to optimize it for our work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vatsala. And a huge thanks to everyone joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was useful for you. My last probably advice would be for anyone who is interested is that it's very important to empower our teams to get comfortable with it and to start playing with it. There's so many ways we can control it by overlaying human controls, guardrails. It's better to err on the side of getting started with it rather than refraining from using it for the moment. And if there's any interest for more hands-on workshops on a specific task, how we can actually prompt it, we will be very happy to help. Let us know what the topics are and we can continue the conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Tugce.
Thanks, Vatsala.